Before this story gets buried like the truth almost was, subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment, because once you see what happened inside this jail, you won't forget it. Inside Snohomish County Jail, how prison food killed an inmate. The stainless steel food cart was still parked outside the tier when deputies realized something was wrong. Inside cell 4B, an inmate lay motionless on the concrete floor, his meal tray tipped on its side, congealed food slowly spreading across the gray surface. Los Angeles County Jail was loud by nature, shouting, metal doors slamming, radios crackling. But in that moment, the block fell into an uneasy silence. The kind that meant someone wasn't getting back up. His name was Marcus Hill. 38 years old. Non-violent offense. He had been alive less than an hour earlier, arguing with another inmate over cold dinner that smelled off. By the time medical staff arrived, it was too late. The official report would later say sudden medical emergency. But the inmates knew better. So did the kitchen workers who refused to make eye contact when questioned. Detective Elena Cruz was called in just after midnight. The sheriff's department didn't like outside scrutiny, but a death tied to jail food triggered alarms no one could ignore. As Cruz walked through the facility, the air felt heavy with something unspoken. Deputies avoided her gaze. Paperwork was incomplete. Surveillance footage was temporarily unavailable. Every step forward felt like pushing against an invisible wall. Marcus's tray was photographed, bagged, and sent for testing. The food looked ordinary: overcooked meat, pale vegetables, a scoop of something claiming to be mashed potatoes. But the smell lingered, sharp and sour. An older inmate leaned toward Cruz as she passed. "This ain't the first time," he whispered. Just the first time they couldn't hide. In the infirmary, Cruz reviewed Marcus's intake records. No allergies. No chronic illness. Nothing that explained why a man could eat dinner and be dead before lights out. Then she noticed something strange. 3 other inmates from the same housing unit had filed medical complaints that week. Nausea. Severe cramps. Dizziness. All dismissed as minor. Down in the kitchen, a locked walk-in freezer hummed softly. Its temperature log hadn't been updated in days. When Cruz asked for the key, a supervisor hesitated, just long enough to raise suspicion. Because whatever killed Marcus Hill didn't come from violence, or drugs, or another inmate. It came on a plastic tray. And when they finally opened that freezer, the truth inside threatened to expose far more than a single death. The freezer door creaked open, releasing a wave of cold air that carried a smell no industrial cleaner could hide. Detective Cruz stepped inside, her breath visible, eyes scanning the stacked boxes of bulk food labeled with dates that didn't add up. Chicken marked as delivered weeks ago. Dairy stored past expiration. Meat sealed in plastic that had clearly been thawed and refrozen more than once. This wasn't negligence. This was a system running on shortcuts. A kitchen worker named Raymond Alvarez stood nearby, hands trembling as he watched Cruz photograph the boxes. He had been at the jail for 7 years, long enough to know the rules, and longer still to know when they were being broken. "They told us to use it anyway," he muttered. "Said throwing it out costs too much. Said nobody on the inside has a voice." Cruz followed the paper trail next. Food vendors. Inspection reports. Budget approvals. Every document pointed to the same uncomfortable truth. Warnings had been issued, concerns raised, and complaints buried. A private contractor responsible for inmate meals had failed multiple safety checks, yet their contract had been quietly renewed. Someone high up had signed off on it. Back in Marcus Hill's housing unit, tension simmered. Inmates banged on their doors, demanding answers. Deputies tightened security, but fear was already spreading faster than control. One inmate collapsed near the showers, clutching his stomach. Another began vomiting uncontrollably. Medical staff rushed in, but Cruz noticed something chilling. None of them touched the food carts. She interviewed Marcus's cellmate, Devon Reed, a jittery man with sleepless eyes. "Marcus said the chicken tasted like metal," Devon whispered. "Said it burned his mouth. I told him not to eat it, but he was starving. We all are in here." Devon paused, swallowing hard. Before he went down, he said, "They know. They just don't care." That night, Cruz received an anonymous email on her encrypted line. No message. Just an attachment. It was an internal memo marked confidential, detailing a refrigeration failure in the jail kitchen 2 months earlier. Temperatures had spiked dangerously high. Food had spoiled. The recommendation was immediate disposal. Instead, the final line read, "Continue service. Risk acceptable." As Cruz leaned back in her chair, another alert came in. Hospital intake. 1 inmate critical. Same housing unit. Same meal. This wasn't an isolated incident anymore. It was an unfolding crisis. And someone inside the jail was desperately trying to make sure it stayed quiet. By morning, Los Angeles County Jail was operating under silence that felt forced, manufactured. The official line was foodborne illness under investigation. Unofficially, deputies were being told to keep inmates calm and questions unanswered. Detective Cruz knew that meant one thing: the clock was running out. The inmate rushed to the hospital overnight was now on life support. Doctors couldn't name the toxin yet, but they were certain of one thing: it wasn't accidental contamination. This was prolonged exposure. Whatever was in that food had been circulating for weeks, maybe months. Cruz felt the case tightening around her like a noose. She pushed harder. Too hard, according to her superiors. A closed-door meeting was called. County officials sat stone-faced as Cruz laid out the evidence: expired food, falsified temperature logs, ignored medical complaints, and a contractor with a history of violations. When she finished, the room stayed quiet. Then the warning came. "This isn't your jurisdiction anymore," one official said flatly. "Let the internal review handle it." That was when Cruz knew she was standing on something explosive. Back at the jail, Raymond Alvarez didn't show up for his shift. His phone went straight to voicemail. When Cruz reached his apartment, the door was unlocked. Inside, drawers were pulled out, papers scattered, his laptop gone. No signs of forced entry. No note. Raymond Alvarez had vanished. That night, surveillance footage from the kitchen finally reappeared. But it was incomplete, critical hours missing. Someone had edited it. Someone with clearance. Cruz received another anonymous message. This time, it was a location and a time. No explanation. Against protocol, she went alone. The meeting spot was a deserted parking structure near the river, blue lights flickering from distant traffic. A figure emerged from the shadows, another kitchen worker. Terrified. Desperate. He handed her a flash drive. "They're swapping labels," he said quickly. "Old food gets relabeled. Inspectors are warned in advance. Anyone who talks gets transferred, or worse." Before Cruz could ask more, headlights flared. The worker ran. A vehicle sped past, barely missing him, disappearing into the night. When Cruz reviewed the files on the drive, her blood ran cold. Emails. Payments. A direct link between the food contractor and county officials. Cost-cutting measures discussed alongside phrases like acceptable loss and manageable exposure. Marcus Hill hadn't just been fed spoiled food. He had been fed into a system that decided his life was expendable. And now, that system knew Detective Cruz was no longer playing by the rules. By the time dawn broke over downtown Los Angeles, the story inside the jail was already being rewritten. Press statements blamed a rare bacterial outbreak. The food contractor issued condolences. County officials promised reform. But Detective Cruz knew the truth didn't live in press conferences. It lived in the files burning a hole in her pocket. She moved fast. Too fast for the people who expected her to back down. The flash drive was delivered to a federal oversight unit before sunrise, along with copies sent to 2 investigative journalists who owed Cruz favors she'd never cashed in. By mid-morning, subpoenas were issued. Inspectors descended on the jail unannounced. This time, there was no warning call. No time to relabel boxes or wipe logs. In the kitchen, they found everything. Hidden pallets of expired meat. Chemical preservatives used far beyond legal limits. Temperature logs altered by the same login credentials, over and over again. A system designed not to feed inmates, but to keep costs invisible. Profits clean. Deaths quiet. Then came the arrests. A contractor executive. A county procurement officer. A supervisor who had signed risk acceptable more times than he could count. The official cause of Marcus Hill's death was updated at last. Toxic food contamination due to gross negligence. But the ending wasn't clean. Raymond Alvarez was never found. The second inmate survived, but with permanent damage. Dozens more quietly came forward, stories overlapping, timelines matching. Years of sickness dismissed as coincidence. Complaints buried under procedure. Lives reduced to line items on a budget sheet. Crews stood outside the jail as news vans rolled in, watching the walls that had swallowed so many voices. The case would be called a success. Reforms would be announced. Contracts renegotiated. But she couldn't shake one final detail. Buried in the emails was a draft memo dated 3 days after Marcus Hill died. It proposed resuming food service using the same supplier, under a different subsidiary name. Same kitchen. Same practices. New label. The machine hadn't stopped. It had only adjusted. As the gates clanged shut behind her, crews understood the most haunting truth of all. Marcus Hill's death wasn't a failure of the system. It was proof that the system was working exactly as designed. And if this story shook you, if it made you angry, unsettled, or uneasy, remember this wasn't the only place it happened. Just the one that finally got caught.